Was arrested preemptively and put on trial in 1981 for leading efforts to protest the Albany appearance of a rugby team from apartheid-ridden South Africa. She was found not guilty. At that time, Nelson Mandela still had many years to serve in prison, and Barack Obama was the teenage son of an absent African father who hardly seemed likely to become the 44th American president.
Then we look at what's happened in terms of poverty in this country, the incarceration rates for African Americans and people of color. We see our school budgets being cut. I mean, we have a lot of work to do.
January 21st, 2013, a day of significant continuing change for our country in the opinion of many here, but still a day when more remains to be achieved.
You know, we've come a long way, but we have a long way together to go.
Now, there were about 40 people who gathered together today in Del Mar to take in the inaugural ceremony. They each paid $30 to cover the cost of the food and the room. Bill Lambton, News Channel 13.
Bill, thank you.
Days before the inauguration, a local activist got the chance to meet with the first family at the White House.
Alice Green says she feels lucky to have had a one-on-one opportunity with the commander-in-chief ahead of the big celebration. Dan Bazil joins us live. He's in the newsroom with a look at her experience. Hi, Dan.
Bonita, Jim, good evening to you guys. Well, Dr. Alice Green says that she was happy enough to see the president, who happens to be African-American, inaugurated on Dr. Martin Luther King's Day, but she says to visit with him at the White House days before the inauguration made it even more special.
She was there in person 4 years ago when President Barack Obama was inaugurated.
As you know, it was the first time we had an African-American president, so the hype was unbelievable.
But for Dr. Alice Green, the second time is more personal, even though she stayed home and watched it on TV.
Last week, on Monday, got an unexpected invitation to appear at the White House with the president, Mrs. Obama.
She got the opportunity on Thursday to spend 2.5 hours in the White House. She was able to wander around, take part in a small reception of about 80 people, and for a brief moment, she had the ear of the most powerful person on earth.
You try to find something that you have in common. So I told him that I was a community organizer.
She also offered the First Lady a special membership in her African American Cultural Center in Albany.
She said, yes, I would love to, and she wants me to send her her membership card and materials.
She snapped a few pictures, but it was prohibited to take photos of the president with a personal camera. Official White House photos of her and the commander-in-chief are on the way, but she took plenty with the vice president.
And then we spent a lot of time with Vice President Biden, who's extremely friendly and likes to talk.
That experience, just days before the presidential inauguration on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, is something she says will stay with her forever.
All of these things are very much tied together for me.
And Dr. Green says it's also the 50th anniversary of that big march in Washington. And she says that all those connections with the swearing in on Dr. King's Bible today made that inauguration and her visit very, very meaningful. Jim?
What a fantastic experience. Thanks, Dan.
Tiki Burden. He was a Capital Region High School basketball legend in his own right. From Philip Schuyler High School in Albany to the University of Utah, and then on to the New York Knicks. Tiki was back in his hometown this afternoon, donating some of his NBA mementos to the Trinity Alliance School. Burden played basketball as a youngster at what was then known as Trinity Institution. It helped lay the groundwork for reaching the heights of his profession. Now, he's not in the best of health these days, but Tiki, who makes his home in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, was certainly in good spirits today.
My gosh, man, you talking about bringing back some memories, man. This is where I learned it at, man. I learned it right here, on this wall here, and it just feels great. Now, I'm looking at it now, I'm saying, now I know how I used to not run over folks because of this wall. I mean, people used to ask me, say, how do you not get charges? I said, well, you never played at Trinity.
Verdict in the George Zimmerman trial. Zimmerman's defense team successfully argued that he was acting in self-defense when he shot and killed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin in Sanford, Florida last year. With racial profiling at the heart of the case, local advocates say they're working on a program to teach kids just how profiling works. Dr. Alice Green at the Center for Law and Justice says one of the things her group is focused on is showing kids how to relate to law enforcement figures on the street. She says while instances like the Martin case are tough for kids to understand, it's crucial to talk to them about it for their own safety.
We especially deal with kids who are likely to come in contact with law enforcement. If law enforcement gives you an order, you do it. The police officer might be wrong. That's why we teach kids what their rights are, and someone might be violating your rights, but that's not the time to deal with it.
Green says there are a number of upcoming events planned, including this Tuesday from 10 to noon at Draper Hall on UAlbany's downtown campus. The White House released a tragedy, not just for his family or for any one community, but for America. I know this case has elicited strong passions, and in the wake of the verdict, I know those passions may be running even higher. But we are a nation of laws, and a jury has spoken. I now ask every American to respect the call for calm reflection from two parents who lost their young son.
All the attention on the Zimmerman trial brought to light the many differences between Florida's legal system and ours here in New York. The 6-person jury, half the size of the 12 we're used to seeing here in the Empire State, and that we were able to witness the trial unfold for ourselves on television, also something that would not have happened here in New York. It's because we're one of the few states that does not allow cameras in courtrooms. And our legal expert says perhaps the biggest difference wasn't procedural, but rather a legislative or political issue.
I think in New York State, you take a city like New York City, I think there's a tremendous reluctance to let anyone walk around with a gun, for example, as part of a community neighborhood watch. It's something that you just don't see here, but the combination of the gun laws as well as stand your ground makes an incident like this perhaps a little bit more likely to occur.
Other procedural differences included the sequestration of jurors, written instructions being permitted to jurors, and the pretrial deposition of witnesses.
Denied in the Florida courtroom where George Zimmerman was acquitted in the killing of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. In the nation. Before she went out on that breaking news we told you about at the top of the show, News 10's Lindsay Nielsen covered this story for us.
Conversations about race were stirred outside the federal courthouse in Albany during a Justice for Trayvon rally, and calls for change were made through signs like these and voices like Robin Ringler, who says stand your ground laws need to be reformed.
They are now in 26 states, and they are a license to kill.
Alice Green, executive director of the Center of Law and Justice, believes a push to change defense laws is the right step.
Very clearly before our society, our country, how damaging and dangerous these laws are. It also suggests that people don't need to think about retreating when they can.
Peaceful protesters here in Albany and across the country are also demanding federal civil rights charges for George Zimmerman. But Green says it's not likely to happen.
You've got to prove that George Zimmerman was a racist, and that was in his mind and thoughts as he violated someone's civil rights. And it's a very difficult hurdle to overcome.
All right, that was Lindsay Nielsen reporting. Green says she has meetings with community groups in Troy and other local areas to talk about protection in their communities.
There is a new report out Thursday from Albany's Center for Law and Justice, and it deals with how Albany Police Chief Stephen Krokoff has handled relations with the African American community. That report indicating Chief Krokoff is doing a respectable job, but the center says more still needs to be done. The report calling for police to work with community members to identify problems. The report says Chief Krokoff has laid the foundation for that policy, but now needs to implement it better. There are several other broad recommendations included in that report. Several branch off into the police department as a whole. Two of them dealing with the department's policy on racial profiling of suspects, and then how those suspects are supposed to be treated during an investigation and following arrest.
Racial profiling has not been eliminated
And I think the department has developed a policy, but the problem is it has not communicated that to the community. But yeah, racial profiling certainly exists.
Well, many of the complaints that we hear are those that Dr. Green mentioned before: disrespect, not treated with respect, not often challenging what the person may have been stopped for, or why the police approached them, but the way they were treated by the police.
The report also calls for all video and audio equipment carried by officers to be in working order and deployed properly. The report says this will allow residents to be assured that their encounters with police are conducted in a lawful and respectful manner.
Reaction to the treatment Deputy County Executive Christine Quinn received on felony drug fraud charges versus ordinary drug defendants, many of them young minority males.
We believe that people are treated differently in the system. There's no doubt about that.
We left a detailed message this afternoon for District Attorney David Soares through his media contact. There was no comment. But over the past 2 days, Soares has insisted there are no special favors in his office.
Any person in Albany County who would find themselves similarly situated to the facts that are contained in this particular allegation would be subjected to the same kind of treatment.
And I just feel that it's a disappointment. It's been a disappointment. And for him to claim that there is a single level of justice dispensed on his watch is a bald-faced fabrication, and he knows it.
Now, leaders Bryan and Green spent almost 10 minutes discussing the unequal treatment they believe the district attorney's office and the justice system give to minority community. We'll hear more of their contention at 6. Bill Lambden, News Channel 13.
Tonight's top story: blistering criticism of the Albany County District Attorney from civil rights leaders. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Jim Cambrick. Benita is off tonight. The first African-American to serve as district attorney in Albany County is being described as a disappointment tonight by the chapter president of the NAACP. David Soares is also accused of turning his back on his own community. Bill Lambden asked the question that led to the blistering criticism and joins us now with more. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, Jim. Longtime Albany civil rights activists called in reporters today to praise police and especially their chief for making strides in improving a long-troubled relationship. But quickly, we learned that praise does not extend to the district attorney and his administration. This week, the Deputy County Executive Christine Quinn was arrested and charged with felony drug fraud.
That there's a disparate way that they treat some arrestees.
Albany County District Attorney David Soares has refused to step aside in prosecuting a defendant he spoke of in complimentary terms. Over the past 48 hours, he has insisted there is no conflict and just one standard of justice in the county.
And there's a track record of our work, and anyone who can find a case where we've demonstrated special treatment for anybody, you'll have to point that out to me.
There's not one standard of justice. I've always seen a two-part criminal justice system, and one is for blacks and other minorities, and the other for whites.
Center for Law and Justice Director Alice Green says David Soares has told her on numerous occasions that they focus drug enforcement efforts on 72 blocks in Albany because that's where the problem is.
No, I think that's one of the things I've heard him say so many times, I don't remember it.
The Albany chapter president of the NAACP.
And for him to claim that there is a single level of justice dispensed on his watch is a bald-faced fabrication.
Now, we requested a follow-up interview with District Attorney Soares through his media contact this afternoon. We wanted to read him the specific quotes and get his response. His spokesman said they have no comment. Bill Lambden, News Channel 13.
In the wake of the George Zimmerman verdict, teens saw a skit to learn more about interactions with police. George Zimmerman, as you know, was found not guilty Saturday. Our Megan Cruz tells us about how this summer program addresses the issues of profiling and what to do when someone approaches you.
Friends who are males who have been stopped by the police. Aha!
I think the problem is perception.
School's out, but about 24 teens filled the UAlbany classroom Tuesday for a lesson in street smarts. It's taught as the shooting of Trayvon Martin is fresh in their minds.
A barrier between the police and the kids, and a lot of it has to do with the way we communicate and how well kids know the law.
To help with this problem, the Center for Law and Justice and the African American Cultural Center of the Capital Region teamed up with the theater troupe Urban Stage to put on some skits for the teens. All 8 skits acted out possible scenarios they may have with police, some saying what they're watching has actually already happened. Then teens heard from lawyer Jessica Gorman about what police can and cannot do.
Approach and stop you on the street. The police have to have a reason. It can't be for no reason. You don't have to consent to searches. You don't have to talk to the police other than giving your name.
Next up, Officer Clifford Young.
Hopefully I gave them some insight on how, an officer might think in these encounters, and maybe they glean some information on how they should act.
They might think I might pull something and attack them, so I learned just to keep my hands at my side.
It lets you know like the rights you have as like a citizen, not just as like a minority or as a Caucasian, like it lets as an American citizen.
An understanding that hopefully prevents misunderstandings.
Prevent cases like the Trayvon Martin.
And if you'd like your teen to take part in one of these workshops, the program runs for the next 6 weeks. Just contact the Center for Law and Justice. In Albany, Megan Cruz, YNN.
Could claim self-defense under Florida law, but that it was a difficult decision.
I think both were responsible for the situation they had gotten themselves into. I think both of them could have walked away. It just didn't happen.
But her interview at one point referring